Ultem did not start as a normal plastic. It actually came out of a very deliberate push inside General Electric in the late 1970s. At the time, GE Plastics was investing heavily into a new category of materials: high-performance engineering thermoplastics. Now, their goal was pretty ambitious. They wanted polymers that could compete directly with metals and thermosets like epoxies in regulated environments. And that's the key context here. GE wasn't trying to invent another plastic for packaging or consumer products. They were trying to build materials that could survive heat, electrical stress, and flame requirements, and do it without relying on heavy additive packages mixed into the plastic. So inside that research program, polymer chemist Joseph G. Wirth and the GE research teams developed polyetherimide, PEI, what became Ultem. And the important thing about that moment is this: the material wasn't discovered by accident, it was engineered. The molecular structure was intentionally designed to deliver a very specific combination of behaviors. Before we keep going, just for a little context, this is actually the category of materials that we've built our entire company around here at Vision Miner. For almost a decade now, we've been focused specifically on high temperature performance thermoplastics and making them practical to 3D print in real manufacturing environments. Today, we build our own high temperature 3D printers for businesses that want to manufacture parts out of materials like this. Machines like our 22 IDEX right back there. Now, back in 2017, we even developed the first custom bed adhesive specifically designed to keep materials like Ultem stuck to the build plate reliably during the 3D printing process. That's nanopolymer adhesive, which is used worldwide now by professionals and hobbyists alike. Now, this whole world of high temperature additive manufacturing has literally been our wheelhouse for almost a decade. Now, if your business is exploring manufacturing with materials like this, everything you need is in the description, our website, contact info, all of that good stuff. But let's get back to the story real quick, going all the way back to the 80s. Now, GE introduced the material commercially in the early 1980s under the name Ultem. And the way they launched it was a little bit, no, very different from most other plastics. Normally, plastics will start in cheap, high-volume markets first: packaging, textiles, consumer goods, and only later do they end up moving into the more demanding industries. But Ultem did the exact opposite. It went straight into aerospace, electronics, medical equipment, and industrial systems. Right away, it was competing with materials like polysulfones and high-temperature polycarbonates, the kinds of plastics that engineers used when reliability mattered more than cost. So the early applications weren't disposable products. They were things like electrical connector housings, semiconductor burn-in sockets, sterilizable medical parts, and secondary components inside aircraft cabins. From the very beginning, Ultem has lived in the reliability markets. Now, interestingly, the first industry that really proved Ultem at scale wasn't aerospace. It was actually electronics. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, the semiconductor and electrical manufacturing industries started using the material in all kinds of production equipment. Burn-in test sockets for chips, connector bodies, high-temperature PCB fixtures, coil bobbins, electrical insulation components. Even connector companies like TE Connectivity and Molex, which everybody watching this probably knows, started using the PEI class materials in their products. Electronics tooling suppliers like 3M used it in manufacturing fixtures. And across the semiconductor equipment supply chains tied to companies like Applied Materials, materials started showing up more and more. And this mattered historically for one simple reason: electronics manufacturing proved the material was consistent. It molded the same way every time. The electrical properties stayed stable. The dimensions stayed predictable. When you're making millions and millions of parts like connectors, consistency is everything. So electronics validated the material long before aerospace ever even started trusting it. By the 1990s, aerospace adoption started accelerating. A huge reason for that was just actually simply and plainly regulation. The FAA introduced strict flammability standards for aircraft interiors, rules like FAR 25.853, and these standards eliminated a huge number of plastics from aircraft cabins. And that created a major challenge for engineers. They needed lightweight materials that could still meet the flame, smoke, and toxicity requirements of aircraft. Now, Ultem could do that largely because the flame resistance is built directly into the chemistry of the material. Polyetherimide is built around rigid aromatic rings connected by what chemists call amide groups. Those rings act like stiff backbones in the polymer chain, which is why the material stays strong and rigid even at high temperatures. Because those chains don't move easily, the plastic also keeps its shape really well. It doesn't creep much under the load, it holds tight tolerances, and it maintains stable electrical properties. The amide chemistry itself is naturally heat and flame resistant, so instead of relying on flame retardant additives, the fire resistance is actually built directly into the molecular structure, unlike filaments like PC, ABS, FR, or other things like that. It isn't just something added later, like in a lot of the filaments we see out there today. So the material started showing up in a lot more aircraft interior hardware, from cable routing brackets, electrical housings, passenger seat subcomponents, HVAC ducting, galley hardware, fire blocking structures. And this adoption didn't usually actually happen through like big announcements from Boeing or Airbus. It actually happened through suppliers. Companies that were building interior hardware actually started qualifying the material and using it wherever it made sense. For example, lightweight galley trolley programs. You know, those carts that flight attendants are pushing down the aisle with all the drinks and food? Those began using Ultem components to reduce weight. Even the catering equipment suppliers like LSG Sky Chefs incorporated it into their systems as well. Now, rail transportation followed a very similar path because trains also transport large numbers of passengers continuously, so they have strict fire safety requirements. Interior panels, electrical housings, fire compliant components, they started using PEI for exactly the same reasons. Now, this was the phase where Ultem crossed an important threshold. It became a certifiable engineering polymer. Around the early 2000s, something else started happening. 3D printing, specifically FDM, had already existed for years, but it was mostly seen as a prototyping tool. Now, that perception started changing when Stratasys introduced a printable PEI formulation called Ultem 9085. This wasn't identical to the base grades like Ultem 1000. 9085 was actually adjusted to widen the processing window, basically the temperature range where the material behaves correctly during the manufacturing process. And it improved the toughness as well, so the material just ended up printing more reliably. Now, a little inside knowledge, Ultem 9085, like this part right here, this part, a few of these parts, this light off-white color is actually Ultem 1010, which is basically 3D printable Ultem 1000, and polycarbonate. So it's not pure Ultem, but it's still loved by many industries. And of course, once we had that material, companies started printing real parts, from brackets to wire routing clips, cable guides, HVAC, composite layup tooling, assembly fixtures. Composite tooling became especially interesting because instead of machining molds out of huge blocks of aluminum, companies could start printing their tooling, often much faster, sometimes overnight, which would dramatically reduce lead times. And again, adoption mostly happened through supplier ecosystems that were supporting Boeing and Airbus, defense contractors, rail manufacturers, all of these. Historically, this is one of the first moments where a certifiable engineering polymer became widely 3D printable. And that changed how the additive manufacturing industry was perceived. Then, in 2007, another major shift happened. General Electric sold its plastics division to SABIC. Now, this turned Ultem from a single company product into a global platform material. The number of grades expanded dramatically, production scaled globally, and more industries gained access to the material. When a material becomes a platform like that, it stops being a niche and starts supporting entire ecosystems. By the 2010s, printing Ultem inside aerospace manufacturing wasn't even experimental anymore. It became a practical manufacturing tool. Companies were printing all kinds of parts. Just go back and watch our Airbus video and see the hundreds of thousands of parts that are flying in the sky right now. If you've been on a plane, you're almost guaranteed to be Ultem parts as part of that plane. Now, composite tooling is especially valuable because printing a mold quickly instead of machining it from aluminum it's a massive advantage. You see this across supplier networks that are supporting aircraft manufacturers like Airbus and Boeing, regional jet programs like Bombardier, and rail manufacturing ecosystems like Siemens and Alstom. So during this period, certified 3D printed parts started becoming a real production solution. Now, as more and more grades became available, Ultem expanded beyond aerospace perception. Ultem 1010 became widely associated with manufacturing infrastructure for sterilization trays, surgical guides, food contact tooling, composite molds, jigs, fixtures, production tooling. At that point, engineers stopped seeing it as a specialized aerospace material. It became a go-to high-temperature engineering plastic. Today, Ultem is a mature material platform. There are more than 100 grades. There's renewable feedstock versions that exist and are available. And multiple manufacturers now produce PEI filament for open material additive manufacturing systems like the 22IDX. Here at VisionMiner, we work with Ultem literally every day. This is a didgeridoo. This is a didgeridoo. I can't play it. Our entire business really exists because materials like this became 3D printable. Now, we design our machines specifically to process polymers like PEI reliably and affordably for real production environments. And we see this kind of ecosystem, the materials, the machines, the suppliers, the manufacturers. It usually means that a material has gone through its full life cycle, from invention to industrial validation to certification to additive adoption to platform expansion, and Ultem has followed that path exactly. Here at VisionMiner, this is a material category that we work with every single day. High temperature production polymers in 3D printing. Ultem is by no means theoretical for us. It's something we literally build machines and workflows around. And historically, the material proved plastics could operate in environments that used to belong exclusively to metals. And that's exactly why it became one of the first polymers that serious engineers wanted to 3D print. In the next video, we're going to look at why PEI actually lends itself so well to additive manufacturing and how different grades like 9085 or 1010 behave when you start printing them on machines like the 22IDX back here. Now, if you're exploring high-temp 3D printing for your business, definitely reach out, shoot us an email, give us a phone call, but thank you so much for watching. Positive rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next video.